Welcome back to Occult Archives. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're going deep into the mysteries surrounding history's most feared books. We're talking about those secrets that some say are too dangerous to read. We're exploring the lore and the reality behind these powerful ideas.
From mystical grimoires to ancient religious texts, there's a certain allure, a sense of danger that surrounds these hidden bits of history.
And today's subject, well, he's practically synonymous with the word enigmatic. We're talking about the Comte de Saint Germain.
Ah, yes. The man, the myth, the legend.
And for good reason, too. You'll find his name whispered in connection with some of the most feared books in history. Not so much as an author, but as someone who supposedly possessed their secrets.
It's almost as if he stepped out of the pages of one of those very books.
Our mission today is to, well, separate the man from the myth. What can we actually know about the Comte de Saint Germain? Was he a hero, a charlatan, or something else entirely?
It's a real historical jigsaw puzzle. We have to figure out what pieces belong, what pieces are missing. It's a real challenge.
And to make things even more difficult, so much information about Saint Germain might be tucked away in private archives, hidden from researchers.
But that just adds to the intrigue, doesn't it?
It definitely does. But we're going to focus on what we do have access to. The documented accounts, the perspectives of the people who actually crossed paths with him.
It's the best way for us to extract some insights and hopefully shed some light on this fascinating, shadowy figure.
We're prioritizing facts over fantasy here, folks. However tempting those fantastical stories might be. Now, before we get lost in the labyrinth of Saint Germain's life, let's clear up one very common point of confusion for you.
Yes, absolutely.
There was another Saint Germain running around Europe in the 18th century, Count Robert de Saint Germain.
A very different character indeed.
This Robert fellow, he lived a very well-documented life. He was a French military man, fought in various armies, even rose to the position of Danish Minister of War. Quite the resume.
A fascinating figure in his own right. He later attempted to reform the French army, but ultimately fell from grace.
But the point is, he's not the Comte de Saint Germain that we're going to be discussing today. They are two entirely separate individuals.
Yes, it's crucial to keep that distinction in mind when navigating the historical records. It's easy to get them mixed up.
So, with that out of the way, let's turn our attention to our enigmatic Comte. Let's start, shall we, with his early life.
Ah, yes, the early life. Or should we say the mystery of the early life?
It really is.
Yeah.
Because pinpointing his exact origins, well, that's task and a half. No birth certificate just lying around.
Precisely. We're immediately plunged into the realm of speculation. But there are some interesting clues for us to consider.
Absolutely. Take, for instance, this letter we have from Graf Karl Kobenzl, written in 1763. Kobenzl himself was a pretty notable guy in his day, and he suspected that Saint Germain, well, he might have been the son of some secret love affair within a powerful, influential family.
A hidden lineage. That certainly adds a layer of intrigue right from the start.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's this other theory that he was actually the third son of Prince Ragazzi. This isn't just some baseless rumor either. There's talk about land, about inheritances.
Right, and that would explain a few things. I mean, if he wasn't just some penniless adventurer, but actually had some wealth and a noble background.
It definitely reframes things a bit. You start to wonder what his real motivations were. Was it just about money, or was there something more to it?
Exactly. Was he trying to reclaim a birthright, or was he hiding from a past he didn't want to be associated with?
That's the thing about the Comte, you never really know. Now, instead of getting bogged down in theories, let's turn our attention to some of the people who actually encountered him.
Let's see what they observed, what they thought about this mysterious man.
The Markgraf of Brandenburg-Ansbach, for example, he met someone called Graf Zaragi at Schwalbach and Treisdorf.
And many believe that Graf Zaragi was, in fact, our very own Comte de Saint Germain, just operating under a different name.
It's classic Saint Germain, isn't it? Always keeping people guessing.
Always a step ahead, it seems. What's fascinating about the Markgraf's account, though, is Saint Germain's seeming preference for a simple, secluded life.
Oh, really? That's a bit unexpected. I mean, you always hear about him being this flamboyant courtier, dazzling everyone he meets.
Right. But according to the Markgraf, he wasn't flashy at all. He enjoyed quiet conversations, spoke about his childhood, his mother. It's a very different side to him.
Almost humanizes him a bit. Then there's this other encounter, this time in Nuremberg. Graf Alexis Orlov. He was a pretty big deal in the Russian court, and he greeted Zaragi with such respect and familiarity.
Caro padre, caro amico, dear father, dear friend.
And to top it all off, Saint Germain, or Zaragi, was wearing the uniform of a Russian general. Talk about making an entrance.
It certainly raises questions about his connections within the Russian elite. Was it a genuine bond or something more strategic?
Another piece of the puzzle. Let's jump over to England now, back to 1745. We're in the midst of the Jacobite Rising, the attempt to restore the Stuart monarchy.
A turbulent time. Tensions were running high, and anyone who looked even slightly suspicious was under scrutiny, especially foreigners.
And wouldn't you know it, Saint Germain ends up in the middle of it all. We have this letter from Horace Walpole, who describes Saint Germain as an odd man, a talented singer and violinist, sure, but also mad and not very sensible, in his words.
Not exactly a glowing review, is it?
Not at all. Then again, Horace Walpole was known for his sharp tongue. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. Was this just a case of clashing personalities, or was there something genuinely unsettling about Saint Germain that Walpole picked up on?
It's hard to say. Luckily, we have another account from Reed's Weekly Journal in 1760. It mentions Saint Germain's arrest, sure, but also his release and an invitation to dine with Lord H.
Most likely that's William Stanhope, the Earl of Harrington.
So clearly not everyone thought he was a dangerous lunatic. This account describes him as fluent in several languages, knowledgeable in arts and sciences, a skilled chemist, a talented musician, and overall, a charming companion.
Quite the turnaround from Walpole's assessment.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights how Saint Germain seems to have had this almost chameleon-like ability to adapt to different people and situations, show them what they wanted to see.
It certainly adds to the mystery. After his time in England, Saint Germain pops up in Vienna for a bit.
Then he spends a year in Berlin, around 1763. Luckily, we have M. Dieudonné Thibault's memoirs to give us a glimpse into that chapter.
Thibault's accounts are full of fascinating details. We learn, for example, that the Abbé Pernety, who was deeply involved in occult studies, recognized Saint Germain as an adept. That's not something to take lightly.
It's a big deal, especially coming from someone like Pernety. It means he truly believed Saint Germain had deep esoteric knowledge. Not only that, Princess Amélie, the sister of Frederick the Great, she actually went out of her way to visit Saint Germain.
Which speaks volumes about the reputation he'd cultivated. He must really impress those in power.
Absolutely. And speaking of impressions, there's this funny anecdote from Thibault where Saint Germain, he's talking about alchemy. And he basically says that those trying to create the philosopher's stone using only fire are, well, foolish.
Like they're missing something fundamental.
It's almost as if he was hinting at a deeper understanding of how alchemy really works. Thibault also described him as refined, intelligent, noble.
It all lines up with the possibility that he might have been born into a prominent family.
And then there's this report that Cagliostro, another infamous figure associated with the occult, he was supposedly Saint Germain's pupil.
Ah, Cagliostro, another fascinating character. He certainly caused quite a stir in his day, although Thibault did note that Saint Germain was far more cautious, more prudent in his actions.
It's like he preferred to operate in the shadows. Now, I know this next bit is going to be especially exciting for you.
Because we're about to delve into the archives, into the realm of alchemy.
Exactly. The real heart of occult archives. And there's no better place for us to start than with Graf Karl Kobenzel's 1763 letter.
This letter is a treasure trove of first-hand accounts, observations of Saint Germain's alchemical pursuits. And what's remarkable is that Kobenzel, he wasn't just blindly believing in Saint Germain's abilities, he was testing them.
Oh, absolutely. He saw Saint Germain transmute iron into something resembling gold. He witnessed his incredible techniques for dyeing and tanning leather.
Techniques, might I add, that far surpassed the conventional methods of the time.
Kobenzel even describes Saint Germain creating the perfect ultramarine pigment and improving painting oils. And Kobenzel, he was no fool. He saw the profit potential in all this.
He went so far as to partner Saint Germain with a merchant in Tournai, hoping to capitalize on these innovations. There are even mentions later on of a manufacturing establishment employing around 100 workers, all thanks to Saint Germain's expertise.
It's less like magic and more like early industrial science, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Saint Germain seems to have possessed a truly remarkable grasp of chemistry and material science, far ahead of his time. Now let's follow Saint Germain on his travels as we move into the 1770s.
The man never seemed to stay in one place for too long, did he?
It's as if he had 1,000 lives to live. We find him in Florence in 1770, traveling with Graf von Lomberg, who praised his vastness of political and philosophical knowledge.
Then he's off to Mantua in 1773, and in Leghorn in 1770 he reappears. Again, he's in that Russian military uniform, and Graf Alexis Orlov calls him Graf Saltykov.
Always with the aliases. It's almost as if he was operating in different worlds simultaneously. Diplomat, scientist, alchemist, soldier, who knows what else.
It's almost dizzying trying to keep up with him. And he was back in Paris in 1770 after his nemesis, the Duc de Choiseul, fell from power.
And according to reports, Parisians were quite sad to see him go when he eventually left. Clearly, he left his mark on the city.
He also visited The Hague and Schwalbach in 1774. There's even a German biography that mentions his presence in Holland in various years: 1710, 1735, 1742, 1748, 1760, 1773. It's almost impossible to pin him down to any one place or time.
Perhaps that's part of his enduring mystique. He's like a phantom, appearing and disappearing at will.
He was also still collaborating with the Markgraf on alchemical experiments. In fact, the Markgraf even obtained the recipe for the Russian tea from him, the aqua benedetta that was supposedly used by the Russian fleet.
It's fascinating how his knowledge seemed to span across so many disciplines, from alchemy and chemistry to medicine and military applications. He was a true polymath.
Okay, let's fast forward a bit to his time with Prince Karl of Hesse around 1779. This is a special relationship, one that really reveals another side to Saint Germain.
Prince Karl welcomed him as a loved and honored guest in Hamburg.
They even collaborated on experiments, with the aim of using their knowledge for the benefit of humanity. Prince Karl's account really shines a light on Saint Germain's character. He talks about Saint Germain's early education under the Duc de Medici.
The Medici family. Another connection to a powerful and influential dynasty. It further strengthens the idea that Saint Germain wasn't some random upstart, but came from a background of privilege and knowledge.
And there's this detail about Saint Germain's interest in herbal medicine. He spent years researching plants, developing his own medicines.
Prince Karl even kept Saint Germain's recipes after his death, although he mentions that the physicians of the time weren't too keen on Saint Germain's unconventional methods.
They probably dismissed him as a quack, but who knows? Maybe those recipes held some hidden wisdom.
Perhaps. Now, for a glimpse into the later part of Saint Germain's life, we turn to the accounts of Madame d'Adhémar.
Madame d'Adhémar's memoirs are a gold mine of information, particularly about Saint Germain's interactions with the French royal court. She claims that from 1768 onwards, he had free access to Louis the Tamboutif's private apartments.
A level of trust that's hard to imagine unless he was truly valued by the king. It's also interesting that she mentions his presence at the death of Madame de Châteauroux, but his absence during Madame du Barry's time.
Like he was selectively choosing which moments of history he wanted to witness. And then there's that story about the king begging Saint Germain for an antidote for the dying duchess.
A desperate plea from a king facing the loss of his beloved.
But Saint Germain, he simply refused. He said it was too late. It's almost as if he understood that some things, well, even he couldn't change them.
It certainly challenges the image of him as a miracle worker who could cheat death at every turn.
Madame d'Adhémar also had her own personal encounter with him at her home. But here's the catch. This happened 8 years after he had supposedly left France.
8 years! Now that's a story for the ages.
She described him as looking healthy, well, even younger than before. He introduced himself as Monsieur de Saint-Moel, of course.
Always with the aliases.
But it's this reappearance, this seemingly ageless quality, that really cemented the legends about his longevity, his immortality.
It's one of the most enduring aspects of his mythos.
Their conversation that day, it was pretty interesting too. He expressed regret over Louis VI's death, which is a bit surprising considering most of France was pretty optimistic about the new king, Louis VI.
It's almost like he saw something darker on the horizon.
And then there's this almost theatrical encounter between Saint Germain and the Comte de Maurepas. Saint Germain just appears out of nowhere after Maurepas had been bad-mouthing him.
It must have been quite the scene.
And then Saint Germain delivers this powerful speech, warning Maurepas not to oppose him, predicting anarchy and chaos for France. He even says he won't be seen again for 3 generations.
A chilling prophecy, especially considering the events that would soon unfold during the French Revolution. It's almost as if he had a glimpse into the future.
It really makes you wonder. Madame d'Adhémar also mentions a conversation she had with Marie Antoinette in 1788. The queen was clearly worried about all the attacks on the king's authority, and she actually referred to your Comte de Saint Germain.
Like his name still held a certain power, a sense of dread, even within the royal court.
And then comes the most chilling part of all. Saint Germain made a prophecy directly to Madame d'Adhémar. When she asked if he would see the queen again, he simply said, no, she is doomed to death.
A chilling prediction that, sadly, would come true. He also predicted that his own fate would mirror that of Cazotte, another figure who foresaw his execution during the Revolution.
It's like he knew it was coming, both for himself and for France. And it wasn't just vague pronouncements either. He specifically warned the Queen about a plot against her, a premeditated murder. It's all incredibly eerie.
These prophecies, whether they were genuine foresight or simply astute observations based on his deep understanding of the political climate, they undoubtedly solidified his legend as a figure with extraordinary, perhaps even occult, insight. It's no wonder he continues to fascinate us to this day.
Speaking of his insight, let's not forget that Saint Germain wasn't just hanging around courts and conducting experiments, he was also involved in politics.
A political player in the shadows.
Madame d'Adamar actually claims that Louis XIV used him on several diplomatic missions, starting in 1749. She says that he handled them all with honor and skill.
Secret diplomacy. It makes sense, considering the complex and often treacherous landscape of 18th century Europe. Louis XV, he was known for working behind the scenes, and Saint Germain, with his multiple identities, his ability to move between countries and social circles, he would have been the perfect secret agent.
It's like something straight out of a spy novel. And this idea of Saint Germain as a secret negotiator, well, it's supported by other historical accounts as well. For instance, we have this letter from Voltaire to Frederick the Great of Prussia, written in 1758. Voltaire mentions Saint Germain in connection with the prime ministers of England, France, and Austria.
Like he was privy to their inner circles. Voltaire even writes that famous line, "He is a man who never dies and who knows everything."
That one line sums up the entire mystique of Saint Germain, doesn't it? Although that bit about him having supped at Trent, well, that turned out to be just gossip.
A bit of embellishment, perhaps, but it speaks to the kind of rumors that swirled around him.
Absolutely. Now, we also have Baron de Gleiken's account, where he describes Marcel de Belleisle sending Saint Germain to Prussia with peace proposals, carrying secret instructions from the king himself.
So clearly, Saint Germain was trusted with highly sensitive information and diplomatic missions.
It's incredible, and it really makes those whispers about him being an adventurer or a charlatan seem a bit off the mark.
Indeed. Now, in March 1760, we have some intriguing correspondence between General York, the British representative at The Hague, and Lord Holderness back in London. York reports that Saint Germain was claiming to be a French negotiator, but the official French ambassador, Comte de Saint Germain, he seemed completely unaware of these supposed negotiations.
The British were definitely suspicious.
Rightfully so. But they were also intrigued. You can almost sense their curiosity in those letters. And what's even more fascinating is that the British king, George III, he suspected that Saint Germain might actually be working for Louis XV in secret, even if his own foreign minister, Choiseul, didn't know about it.
It's like a real-life spy thriller. Louis XV's secret diplomacy was clearly a very complicated, very secretive affair. But all these clandestine operations, they really complicate things when the Duc de Choiseul enters the picture. He really didn't like Saint Germain.
Choiseul called him an insufferable adventurer. He saw him as a threat, a thorn in his side.
We have a ton of letters between Choiseul and Comte d'Affry, and Choiseul is basically ordering d'Affry to discredit Saint Germain, to get him arrested, extradited, anything to get rid of him. He even suggests spreading nasty rumors about him in the Dutch press.
Choiseul was clearly determined to destroy Saint Germain's reputation and his influence. Talk about a political rivalry.
Now, the interesting thing is that d'Affry, he wasn't so sure about Choiseul's harsh judgment at first. I mean, he actually met Saint Germain, had dinner with him. He even said that Saint Germain was moving in very respectable circles.
So he wasn't immediately convinced that Saint Germain was a fraud, but ultimately he had to follow Choiseul's orders. He warned bankers in Amsterdam about Saint Germain and even presented a formal complaint to the States General, trying to expose him.
It really shows how much power Choiseul wielded, how afraid people were of crossing him. But then we have another perspective, a very different one.
Right, Baron de Bentinck van Roon. He actually liked Saint Germain and helped him escape from The Hague. He gave him a passport, obtained from the British minister York, no less.
Bentinck believed the whole affair was just court intrigue, nothing more. He basically said that it was all just internal drama within the French government.
So clearly, Saint Germain had friends in high places, people who believed in him or at least sympathized with his situation.
And all this political maneuvering, all these conflicting perspectives, they swirl around Saint Germain's attempts to broker peace in Europe. It's truly like something out of the history book, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it just adds more layers to the enigma of Saint Germain. Was he a genuine peacemaker, or was he manipulating events for his own gain? We may never know for sure.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the Comte de Saint Germain, He remains a mystery wrapped in an enigma, doesn't he?
He's a fascinating mix of historical fact, personal anecdotes, political intrigue. It's hard to separate the man from the myth. He embodies the contradictions of his time, this era of Enlightenment thinking clashing with an enduring fascination with the occult.
And even today, centuries later, we're still trying to figure him out. Was he the revered philosopher, the skilled scientist that Prince Karl believed him to be? Or was he just a clever charlatan, as Choiseul claimed?
Perhaps the truth, as is so often the case, lies somewhere in between.
It's almost as if Saint Germain was a master of perception, a man who understood how to present different faces to different people, to always keep them guessing. And maybe that was the point all along. And you know what? This whole idea of occult archives, of secrets too dangerous to read, it's not just about those ancient texts, those forbidden grimoires.
I see what you mean.
The real secrets, the truly dangerous ones, they might be hidden in plain sight.
Like in the lives of individuals like Saint Germain, whose knowledge and influence extended far beyond what we can easily comprehend.
It's a really tantalizing thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Given all that we've discussed, his vast knowledge, his political maneuvering, those persistent rumors about his longevity,
Yeah.
what if his influence on history was far greater than we realize? What if there are more secrets, hidden not in books, but in the untold stories of people like him?
It really blurs the line between history and myth, doesn't it? It makes you wonder what else is out there waiting to be discovered.
Well, that's something for you all to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the incredibly fascinating and mysterious world of the Comte de Saint Germain. Until next time, keep questioning.
And always keep questioning.